But with that, let me talk a little bit about what's in the news as we talk about network access control and privilege access management. Probably the first thing that comes up is the whole SALT Typhoon campaign, especially if you're from a telecom company. This was a very significant breach and compromise that took place. And what's interesting about that Salt Typhoon breach is I was just reading, if you look at the article here to the right, MSN, FBI and Canadian cybersecurity agencies warn that the same Chinese hackers are attacking telecom services in Canada. Um, so think of this as like Salt Typhoon 2.0 if you're a Canadian provider. Other worthy stories in the news, Forbes reports, this is another one of those massive password drops. Um, we've heard about these type of drops before. We've seen them before. And in many cases, it's just a repackaging of the same 5 billion, 10 billion, 16 billion that was dropped, 2 or 3 years ago. But I will tell you, from all that I've read about this, they're looking at this as a fairly new drop. I mean, there's going to be some duplicates of what's been dropped before, but a fairly mass scale, probably one of the largest password leaks took place just recently. So be aware of that. And there's a good article if you want to read that in Forbes. Of course, with what's been taking place in the Middle East, the Department of Homeland Security has reported, without surprise, of course, that we've got a pro-Iranian group of hackers that will likely be targeting U.S. networks. Um, so especially those individuals responsible for critical infrastructure, be aware. And there's articles concerning that, which you can take a look at. And then last but not least, USA Today, customer data possibly linked or leaked in a Aflac cyber attack. So this is the third insurance hack that we've seen within the last month. Aflac is the latest and the greatest. So just a little bit of what's going on in the news, but let's get right to our discussion and our roundtable. So I want to start off about just talking about one of the most popular NAC solutions. At least it's one that I've implemented, or at least tried to implement. And those were solutions like Cisco ICE. And I'm just curious, and I wanted to hear from others that may be on the call, why are NAC solutions, whether it be Cisco ICE or some other solution, why do they tend to be so difficult for an enterprise to implement? And
Oh, I have one that I've run into very directly recently, which is most of the NAC solutions are very heavily dependent on certificate management.
okay,
And I have found that most organizations, sometimes regardless of size, have real PKI problems. And, so you end up with, I'll give one that I saw just last month, which is an entire company that was running a NAC solution using self-signed certificates by the network team. So there was no control over the certificates. They'd expire. You'd end up people not being able to get onto the network. It just became a nightmare for them to operate the NAC system because they had no control over the item that was being used to identify the platforms to the network environment.
good feedback. Good feedback. Others, if you come off mute and discuss why are NAC solutions typically difficult to implement?
Yeah, I would add to
Well,
that.
Uh, yeah, Andre,
Yeah,
we'll go with Andre first, and then we're going to go with We'll go with Mark.
Yeah, just briefly, I'll add to that. I mean, it's the complexity of it. It's the integrations, those types of things. So that's how I would add to it.
Okay, Mark.
Yeah, and again, it's the original NAC or legacy NAC was always so centralized where you had a smaller um, environment or a smaller subset, and now things are blowing up to where everything's everywhere. And beyond that, okay, so you let someone in, but what did they do after they got in? How did you track or know that they were up to doing regular work or if they're up to no good?
Right. Right. I mean, I think you said it there. The legacy NAC solutions was really just the doorkeeper, right? But then once they were let in, we don't know what's going on after the fact. Chris, was that you that
Yeah,
opened
yeah,
the
yeah.
conversation?
It was. It's just it was interesting when you brought up ICE because we've implemented ICE and we have so far been successful. So I'm not sure that it's difficult. I think it's time consuming,
Yeah.
and I do appreciate what somebody said a few seconds ago about certificates and that because we're always
Yeah.
fighting that with Cisco.
How many
Um,
devices, Chris? Just out of curiosity,
we've got
or
it's
endpoints?
probably around about 5,000 devices.
5,000? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Good, good, good. Anyone else want to
Yeah.
comment on this particular
So
question? Yeah.
yeah, I agree with Chris. We have a similar situation with ICE.
Okay.
We're a little bit larger, about 8,000 endpoints, and I think it's really the coordination between all the different parties, right? It's the security policies and making sure they map correctly to the rules that are implemented on the ICE side, and making sure that your PKI management team is also working hand in glove with the network side to not have rogue certificate issuers and things like that,
Right.
and make sure you're covered there, right? And I think the maturity of the organization helps with those things. And certainly we're in financial services, so that's heavily regulated. And we have questionnaires from our regulators every year that say, how do you manage this? What do you use for this? And all this other stuff. So they forced us to kind of lock down some of the processes. And that, having a solid process makes everything easier, I think, going forward.
Absolutely.
To
Hey,
me,
Mike.
that all sounds like resources. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a very small network team. So if it took one of those four people spending all of their time doing this, then we would get nothing else done.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think it's
that's
hard to
true.
get over the hump to get it in place, but the care and feeding isn't as great once you have it in place, but it's a significant effort to get it in place successfully.
It's also really important that you document your procedures because to your point, Mike, that you just brought up, it's once you get things running, the trouble is you want to make sure you're doing the same thing the same way every time. Otherwise, otherwise, and again, unfortunately, I've seen this. You end up with chicken with their head cut off syndrome, where people are just running around trying to solve a problem that isn't really a problem, but it's just that they don't know how to solve it and they have not documented how the problem should be solved.
Yeah. Let me expand on what we discussed so far. What limitations do you face with your current NAC or even your PAM tools? I mean, there's got to be some limitations here, right? So, what are some areas where, when it comes to NAC, you know, it's not as broad of coverage as you would like? Or maybe when it comes to your PAM tools, the coverage isn't there.
Do you mind if I speak up?
Yeah, yeah, Chris, go ahead.
Sorry, I just, some of the challenges, stem from, zero trust architectures, ETA, the identity first security models, cloud native and DevOps practices. A lot of this is like AI driven threat detection. Just my thoughts.
Okay, no, good. Good, good, good. I appreciate that. Other limitations when it comes to
Yeah,
your PAM or NAC solution.
Maurice, I was going to say about the problems with zero trust, but also you have a situation with limited, visibility. You got, again, the integration is still could be a challenge. Those are some of the things that I was thinking about.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, and I was going to add, it getting the setup when they mentioned earlier, if you're doing it and you get it set up right, or you're going in one direction, or if something comes along and changes it, and you have to redo it all, it's starting from scratch, and it's like someone said, well, it's not that hard work. It just takes time. Well, time equals money, and AI doesn't really allow for time, right? So
Yeah.
you gotta be ahead of the game and try to stop it at the front instead of waiting to try to react.
I appreciate that, Mark. I've got a
I think for,
yeah, go on.
yeah,
Cindy.
I'm thinking that for my own organization, we have a lot of legacy systems. So there's an issue with, integrating those with some of the PAM tools and implementations that we've done. So we find that, there's no support for that. So that's one item too.
Okay, good. I just launched a poll question to everyone. Hopefully, everyone is seeing this right now. And that question is, how are you currently managing privileged access to your network infrastructure? Routers, through switches, through firewalls. So it's a multiple choice. I want to give everyone some time uh,
Hey,
to answer that.
Maurice.
So we're going to keep that up there for a moment. Again, how are
Maurice.
you currently managing privileged access to your network infrastructure?
Hey, Maurice, can I speak up while everybody's answering that?
Yeah, Manny.
Sorry, I joined a bit late. My apologies.
That's okay.
My throat's a bit, Craig, scratchy. I'm recovering from the flu. But here's a problem I've seen with the question you're asking. If you really think about it, NAC and PAM were designed, are very mature but old designs, and they've not really gone all the required transformation to catch up to everything that's happening in technology from the modern space. So, I mean, we may have the perfect NAC, but is it ready for, let's say, an adapted attack that was created using a new CVE that
Yes.
somebody created a proof of concept using GenAI from a yesterday's CVE? Can NAC or PAM handle that? Can they? No, they cannot. And I think that's the biggest problem. I mean, it's not that NAC or PAM are bad. It's just that they were designed for a prior generation of technology and they've not been updated to today's world. We need a different kind of solution. Expecting them to continue to provide that old kind of secure access is asking for trouble.
Well, I think I agree with you, but I have a slightly different take on it, which is that it's a progressive process. So I was once told the most dangerous words in information security were, "But we've always done it this way." I think the key is, particularly with the PAM environment, is that people like, I hate to say it, you run into people in groups who want to have the admin password to the admin account rather than the access to those things that they need access to at that moment. And so even getting, in a contemporary basis, even getting certain support groups to use PAM is a challenge. The same way that getting them to use NAC because they want to like bring their, Belchfire 9000 in and plug it into the network.
I agree with you, Michael. And you reminded me of, I was smiling because you brought to mind an old employee of mine. This is 2012. We were trying to do something different with our Cisco core routers.
Yep.
And the guy says, yes, I know what you're saying can be done. I know other people have implemented it that way, but I have never done it. Therefore, it cannot be done. and, that's where my concern is. It's not that it's not progressive. See, the problem is people are not educating themselves or the relevant people. I'm not speaking
Right.
about the general user, but we need our admins, we need our network security engineers, we need our security SOC people. All of them, they need to be spending at least 20% of their day updating their knowledge
Yeah.
on recent technology. If they don't do that, then no matter what we do, will fail. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, businesses, organizations are not ready to allow that 20% slack time for the person to self-educate.
Yeah, the other thing you run into is like, I'm a CISSP, so I have to make my 40 CPEs a year.
Yep.
And I found that a lot of the companies I work with, the people who work for those companies, the company won't even pay for training.
Yep.
They're looking at strictly, productivity to them is, how many widgets can you generate in an hour, not how productive can you be with the proper training and the proper controls.
Yeah, Manny, Michael, thanks for the comments. Let me continue on in terms of trends that we're seeing. What trends can any of you discuss? Any trends that really make the proper implementation of a NAC PAM solution more urgent today than in the past? What trends are we seeing?
Well, I already brought up the one with we're seeing more and more people wanting to bring, as said half jokingly, I use the phrase, their Belchfire 9000 computer and plug it into the corporate network.
Yeah.
It's the classic, bring your own, bring your own platform type of problem. And where we're seeing it very acutely, and I don't know if other people are running into this, is that more and more of our users are using technology like open virtualization to be running virtual machines on their platform. So we're seeing, oddball machines popping up on networks, and we need to be able to control that, even if it's through the same interface as the machine that's been plugged into.
Thanks, Michael. I'm sending out another poll question. So only about 25% of you guys answered the first poll question. This has to do with which team is responsible for implementing a PAM solution for network devices. So think about that. And again, this is multiple choice. Is it your identity team? Is it your security team, your infrastructure team, your network team? Again, which team would be responsible for implementing a PAM solution for your network? Yes.
Yeah, so for us, it does fall back to my team, the network team. However, we have to stay within the guardrails from the information security team. They don't actually want to do anything, but they just want to tell everybody else they're doing it wrong or they need to do it better or something like that. So it's on us to implement, but it's on them to approve and say it's good enough.
Okay. And so far, 7 of you have said identity, 14 have said the security team, 7 have said the infrastructure team, 14 have said the network team. And those numbers keep going up. I'll give
Maurice,
yes.
I was going to answer it a different way. I was going to say all of the above. We need more collaboration because when you're talking about legacy solutions, we've always had siloed teams. So I think the collaboration would make it much more efficient and make things better. And in regard to the trends that we're seeing, we see so many different devices. We see so many ways to connect to an organization network. So those are the things that are dangerous for us.
Okay.
I agree with you, Andre. That's what I said too. I mean, I selected all 4 because it needs to be that collaboration to be successful.
Yeah. Let me share those results from that poll just so you guys can see there. So 35% of you said identity team would be responsible for implementing a PAM solution for network devices. 18% or 69%, so the greatest amount, almost 70% said it's just your security team. They're responsible for a PAM solution for networking devices. 38% of you, 10 of you said infrastructure team, and then another 15 of you 58% said the network team. Thought I would.
Yeah, and I think it was the way it was asked too, because implementing and putting the tool out there and having the policies and the guidelines and everything, I think a lot of places it's the security team because they've got the policies and the rules, but they still want the input and the work for the care and feeding and putting the information in by the actual network team or the users who actually know the personal detail, but with some oversight, right?
Agreed, Mark. Let me ask one more question before we introduce our technology provider who's going to continue this conversation for us. When it comes to a PAM solution today, how important is it that that solution be agentless? I'm just curious. Um, any thoughts on a agentless solution? Does that simplify deployment for you?
I'd say that I'll put it depends on what you mean by agentless.
Okay.
Because first of all, a lot of platforms won't accept an agent. If you're using some form of external privilege management, is probably the best way to implement, where you have your privilege management actually being managed off platform. But I think the practicality of, we have obviously network equipment and things that are online, but we also have Unix systems and we have Windows systems and we have those people who insist on using Macintoshes. And so even having an agent becomes a problem. So I think the key is putting the access control off system
Okay.
is the real key.
Well, with that said, thank you, Michael. I would like to introduce Craig Riddell. Uh, Craig is here from Kron Technologies. He's the field CISO over at Kron. And Craig's going to continue the discussion, talking a little bit about the unique Kron PAM solution. So, Craig, are you there? Can you hear us? And I want to make sure that you can share your screen as well. So you might want to give that a try on your end. All right. It looks like it is coming up there. All right, Craig. So, Craig, both Field CISO and VP of Technology. So it's all yours.
Is he
Craig,
on mute? Looks like he's on
Maybe.
mute. Yeah.
you might be on mute, Craig. No, that's okay. We're gonna make this work. No, Craig, we still can't hear you. Still can't hear you. And we're gonna just give Craig a moment to come back on. Eric, are you on
Hey,
as well
can you
from
hear me,
Kron?
Maurice?
Yes.
Okay. I don't
There
know
we
what's
go.
happening. It's not my Bluetooth isn't working, so I'm just going to use my laptop speakers. Sorry about that.
All right, sounds good.
All right. So I just want to say the questions have been fantastic so far, and the ones in the chat too. I really appreciate a lot of the insights there, and I agree with a lot of what was said as far as these controls needing to evolve and cover the entirety of the identity threat landscape and all of that. But I want to set the tone of this by just saying this isn't designed to be like a teardown of NAC and what it can and cannot do. It's really just that, an evolution of control and context. It sounds like a lot of your organizations have already done the hard work of rolling out NAC, and you understand that, it takes a lot to get it up and running. And then once it's there, it works for what it does, but the work doesn't stop at the point of access. So our challenge is securing what happens after that initial connection, especially in critical infrastructure. And I saw it asked in the chat too about, covering all of the various areas where we have a privilege with a single pane of glass. And that's essentially one of the things that we talk about a lot here at Kron is everywhere else, our IT environments, our cloud environments, all of that type of stuff, we've implemented these zero trust concepts. But for whatever reason, in a lot of our networking and backbone components, we still operate on implicit trust, shared accounts, and things like that. And that's really where we see the difference between NAC and PAM. NAC shines at, the initial posture checks, checking to make sure the endpoint is compliant, like we talked about earlier with certificates, making sure we're on the proper VLAN, and then authenticating the user. But that's where most NAC capabilities stop. They don't actually monitor what is happening during those sessions. And that's where PAM extends that type of enforcement over a session lifecycle, which is absolutely critical for zero trust. So we make the argument that this implicit trust and without session enforcement and posture checks alone, they give you a real false sense of security. And as Maurice talked about, we saw that taken advantage of in these Salt Typhoon attacks. Before we really get into that, talk about compliance. I heard a couple of people talking about, doing GRC and stuff like that. NAC alone that really leaves identity gaps and compliance blind spots when you start to talk about primarily least privilege. You can pass a compliance check at a surface level, but auditors are getting more technically competent. And we're seeing a lot of people engaging us with, hey, we felt like we were in compliance, but had an audit finding, and now how do we go out and fix this? And that's really where we're help bridging these gaps without duplicating or re-architecting what you've already done in the NAC. We can completely complement that. So when we start to talk about modernizing access with privileged access management, what does that mean? Really talking about identity-aware sessions, which means that we can tie everything back to a real user. So even if it was a situation where we had a shared service account, we could see that Craig used that account at this time, and this is what happened. Just-in-time access eliminates the need for standing privileges and standing credentials, whether that's a password or a key. We'll dive into the Salt Typhoon attack here in just a little bit. And for anybody who's researched that knows that it was largely dependent on static and reused SSH keys to move around and elevate privileges. And then the full session brokering, we can get into command control, whether that's whitelisting or blacklisting commands, having workflows for step-up approvals, and then wrapping a user behavior analytics engine around all of that to make sure that we can do risk-based session enforcement. All of that really ties into zero trust quite well. And it doesn't matter whether that's an interactive session or a session at the CLI level, we can provide these same types of controls. So everything we do is really built around enforcement, visibility, and ease of deployment. We don't require any sort of agents. We have a completely agentless architecture. We have our own built-in AAA server, so we can bring authn and authz to the infrastructure layer itself. As I mentioned before, we do have user behavior analytics where we can kick off multiple workflows, whether that's an additional MFA prompt, sending an alert to your SOC to have the session monitored or audited in real time, step-up authentication for your manager to approve, just as a couple of examples. And our strong belief here is really just a pretty easy to understand principle, which is our environments, as many of you brought up during this call, have become too dynamic for static access policies. We have to have telemetry-based decisions and approval workflows. This slide is way too busy for me to kind of get in, but I do have this to send out to everybody. This is just some of our capabilities and why we think this matters. I heard somebody bring up legacy infrastructure, which is typically something that's really hard to deal with for privileged access management vendors. But because we have this agentless approach, tech debt is something that we can usually work with. And then centralizing this AAA with identity aware policies, really just getting into that dynamic nature of just because something was, established and authenticated once doesn't mean that it can't be hijacked, doesn't mean that we shouldn't do this continuous monitoring and authentication as these sessions continue. So just a couple of things before we get into that Salt Typhoon breakdown. PAM is often thought about as hard to deploy. I have a few statistics that I've heard this year that said this was the first year where we've crossed the failure threshold to where we have more failed PAM deployments than actually completed ones. Our solution offers native support for protocols like TACUS, SNMP, and Radius, again, with no major re-architecture, agents to deploy, or anything like that. And we have fast time to value, especially for telecommunications, OT, air-gapped environments. And then for other environments, we do support cloud and hybrid deployments as well. But let's dive into something real. Let's talk about Salt Typhoon. So Salt Typhoon was a Chinese APT attack that primarily attacked Cisco routers, but they were able to get in using some web shells. In some instances, there was over 1 million records. It pretty much hit every major telecommunication provider in the US. And then, as Maurice said, it's spreading into Canada. And it's really because this problem is not unique to telcos. It's pretty prevalent across any major infrastructure that I've audited, which is SSH key usage is uncontrolled. I used to work for SSH actually, and it was a thing that we talked about all the time, which was it's interesting. It's so heavily used, but it's one of the things that would never be able to pass a procurement process today. Keys are hard to tie to an identity. They never expire. They're often replicated to the next system as we update our technology because we're worried about breaking an automated process. And they're heavily utilized in most major breaches as the way to get around and eventually elevate your privileges. So a couple of quick statistics from the Verizon DBIR report, which is 60% of organizations show that they can't identify who's using a shared SSH key. Again, like I said earlier, it's really hard to tie to an identity. And I was kind of surprised at the 74% number. I thought that would be much, much lower, or much, much higher. I'm sorry. Report having poor key hygiene or no expiration tracking. SSH key management is a real issue, and it's something that I haven't seen a lot of good solutions to. PAM is a great way to kind of stop the bleeding and decouple that SSH key usage and provide good rotation and stuff, but it's not the answer. You still have to go out and identify service accounts and all of the other things that use that as well. So how we do that, again, getting into more of that just-in-time type of access schema, tagging sessions with user identity and logging all of the commands, and then getting into the user behavior analytics side of things too. I know, did somebody have a question there, Maurice? Sorry, I didn't.
Well, you know what? I just want to ask something. So going back to the Salt Typhoon situation, so was the initial access or the initial technique used to compromise the network, was it because of old and unpatched systems?
It was kind of a mixture. In some instances, they were able to gain access to locally stored SSH keys through either phishing attempts and then eventually malware installation.
Okay.
In some, it was exploiting CVEs and Cisco routers to gain web shells and then expand from there. So it was kind of a few different primary attack, like command and control ways. But eventually what happened was they were able to compromise routers and signaling gateways. And then they were able to basically see that it was a set of very few SSH keys that was propagated throughout their entire infrastructure.
And it wasn't just Cisco.
No, it was all, it was all
appliances. I mean, Fortinet appliances, Versa. and many
Yep.
other network appliances as well, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, that's right.
All right. Other questions for Craig before he jumps on to his next slide? I just want to open it up to the group real quick. Questions concerning NAC or PAM. Don't be shy, guys.
So you mentioned about the PAM solution you just discussed, right? Right. So talking about legacy system, can you just quickly just talk about how your solution can help?
Yeah. So our approach to handling any sort of like legacy or technology debt type of deployment is really, we don't require agents. We do have an agent that can be installed, but that's completely optional. There's no change in functionality. It's really more of the way the direction of traffic flows. But for our agentless deployments, as long as we can support the communication protocol, it really doesn't matter what your tech debt is, either on the front side, on the client side, or on the actual server side. So that's one of our things coming from this large telecommunications background, is we have to support a large variety of endpoints.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Actually, one comment that I would have is that, as much of a problem as SSH is, I still find organizations using Telnet
Oh yeah, yeah.
for their devices, and I mean, nothing like putting it right out there.
I know, right? It always amazes me what you can find, or like old rsync servers that have never been decommissioned that are in plain text and all of that. But yeah, Andre, I see you too.
Yeah, Andre, you have a comment?
No, I had a quick question, but you may be getting to it. I'm still concerned about the non-human identities.
Yeah, I don't have much in this slide deck about NHIs, but non-human identities are one of the things that I have a white paper I can send you on that I think is pretty interesting. It's as somebody who, and I guess I didn't do a very good job of introducing myself because of the microphone issues, but I've kind of been all over my career in identity, eventually leading the identity program at HP. And one of the things that we were heavily investing in there was these NHIs and robotic process automation accounts and all of these things, which from an IAM practitioner's perspective is interesting because it's not a non-interactive account. It's not quite an interactive account. So you have to treat it completely separately. And the way that I think is the most effective to do that is heavy API integration, which from a cron perspective, every single thing that we can do in our UI, we have a corresponding API call, and just-in-time or ephemeral-based credentials, so that they can only use those credentials for the length of the session, and then they're not only just terminated, but they're not available they're completely removed for use on any sort of endpoint. So you're removing kind of that access problem, because those non-human identities introduced because of the lack of availability to prompt them with MFA and these other things that would break their workflow.
Thank you.
So just real quick, going to get into a case study, and being cybersecurity professionals, I'm sure that you can understand why we can't drop customer names here and stuff like that. But we were approached by a large telecommunications provider. As I said, Kron has our background in telecommunications. That's been where we've been for the past 16 to 17 years now. And the problem was exactly, they're worried about failing an upcoming audit. They wanted to basically modernize network access and they were worried about shared credentials and lack of session visibility. Lack of session visibility came up because somebody changed a configuration file. They couldn't figure out who did it, when it was done, how it was done. They were worried about potential breach, and it ended up just being somebody misconfiguring it and not wanting to own up to it. So they wanted more visibility on what was happening in these administrator sessions for shared accounts. We were able to do all 5,000 routers and switches with a 98% credential replacement in 1 quarter. Zero policy violations. As I said before, everything that we do has a corresponding API call. So we're able to automate a lot of their privileged account onboarding and credential rotation. And everything that we do, again, we're mapping back to those compliance frameworks, and we're just getting ready for audits. As somebody who sat on that IAM side of things, I felt like that was my job, was starting one audit, completing it, getting ready for the next. And with these types of automated reports and being able to provide the complete command line breakdown of every single session. And if you want to get really, really refined, you can even integrate this with your ITSM and say, here's every single approved connection that happened. Here's every command that was ran. Here's every person who used a shared account. And we can package all of that up and automate the reporting side of that to get you ready for your audits. And I know this has been a bit of a fire hose, but I really appreciate all the time. One of the 4 things I really want you to take away here is a strong understanding, and I think everybody has this, that NAC is the door, PAM is continued monitoring and of everything that happens once you're through the door. It's the enforcement of least privilege. It's the missing the identity and contextual awareness that NAC kind of has a gap in. And then I would make a strong argument that until we get rid of implicit trust and shared accounts and credentials, that we cannot say that we have any sort of zero trust story that we can actually stand behind. And again, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for the time today. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Yeah, Craig, I want to throw something out there real quick. What percentage of enterprises out there, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but are using, well, what percentage of enterprises are not using a PAM solution for their networking devices today?
I would say it's becoming, it used to be basically, unless you had a compliance, some sort of external compliance mandate, you didn't really have PAM. It was just something you were kind of forced to use. Now that you're starting to see cybersecurity insurance requirements with privileged access management components in it, it's becoming a very small number of organizations that don't have PAM deployed. But PAM, when it comes to the network side of things, is not something that I've really seen any sort of deep market penetration there. And I think it's really because the traditional PAM vendors don't have a built-in AAA server. So they can't really start to get into the TACUS and all of that type of stuff, which is crucial for this. So PAM cannot be a direct replacement for anybody who has a mature NAC deployment like ICE, and it doesn't do the VLAN segmentation. It doesn't do all of that stuff. So the way other PAM vendors would have to approach this problem would not be integration, but replacement, and the network controls aren't there.
So what really stands Kron out from all the rest is that Kron is offering a network PAM solution.
That's exactly what we do.
Right,
Yes.
right. And there's a lot of enterprises, just as you stated, that, yeah, they've got PAM installed in some way, shape, or form, but it's not a network PAM solution. And that's the difference between Kron and everybody else.
And
Yes,
Kron is
exactly.
100% on-prem and no cloud versions. Did I miss that?
No, so good question. So no, it's not. We have the ability to extend PAM into the network layer, but we can also hit all of the other PAM use cases that any other PAM vendor would when it comes to standard IT or cloud entitlements management or any of that stuff. So we have a full cloud-based version of this solution. We can be deployed in a hybrid model, or we can be deployed on-prem or in air-gapped environments, whatever architecture you need, pretty much.
Great, thanks.
And I know that you didn't mention this, Craig, but when it comes to this particular category of network PAM, I just want to let those on the line or those within the audience know that Gartner Peer Insights actually has Kron at the highest rating. It's like a 4.8. I think it's almost impossible to get 5 stars when you have so many people rating the solution. But that's a really great rating, 4.8, coming from the Gartner Peer Insights. Basically a 5.0 for most of your customers in terms of your ranking. Other comments or questions for Craig at all? All right. Well, was there one more maybe? Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to step up real quick and say I
Yeah.
appreciate the
Yeah,
opportunity
Chris.
to be here and the very large knowledge drop. So thank you, Craig, and of course you as well. Maurice.
You bet. You bet. And I know we had over 100 register for this event. So I want to say thank you for those of you that joined. And if for some reason, for those that, folks that didn't, we'll make sure that we, of course, send out a follow-up email. I know that Kron has just launched a website, networkpam.com. Real simple to remember, networkpam.com. Check out the website. You can request a demo, which will take you, one step further than our discussion here. And, they would be very happy to do that through a demo to show you why they've got that highest rating when it comes to a PAM network solution. So Craig, again, thank you very much. I'm going to take back the reins here for a moment.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me let's see here. All right, hopefully you guys can see that there. I want to say thank you to some of our participants today. Thank you not only for coming on, but also for the questions and the participation. And hopefully some of you haven't jumped off yet because I've got a few names that I want to call out. And I've got a nice JBL speaker for the summertime that I'd like to send out to each of you. So first of all, is Manny still on? Manny? Okay, Manny, I've got a JBL speaker for you. Do me a favor, Manny. Send me a private chat with your shipping address, your email, and a mobile phone number for tracking. Again, send that into a private chat, and I will get that JBL speaker over to you. Mike Erdlin, are you still on? Mike?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, we got a JBL speaker for you as well, Mike, for the summer. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Yep, thanks for participating. Same thing as I told Manny, send me a private chat, shipping address, email, phone number for tracking, and I'll get that sent out to you. Chris, is it S or no, Chaille?
Chaille, yeah.
Chaille, yes, there you go. Hey, Chris, thanks for jumping on and participating. JBL speaker for you as well.
Thanks, sir.
Send me a private chat if you could. Laura, are you still on? Laura, I think it was McDermott. Laura going once, you might be on mute. Laura going twice. All right. How about Mike? Mike Erdlin, are you on still? Mike going once.
You already got me.
Oh, you know what? I did, Mike. Sorry about that.
Thanks.
Chris Lovett. Chris, are you on still? We had 2 Chris's. Chris may have had to jump off to another meeting. Understandable. Mark Harkin, are you on? Mark Harkin, still on? Mark probably had to jump to another meeting as well.
I'm here.
Oh, Mark, hey, I've got a JBL speaker for you, Mark.
Thank you.
You betcha. Send me a private chat with all the info. Andre Payne, are you still on?
Yeah, identity.
Yes, I'm still here, Maurice. Thank you.
All right, Andre, send me a private chat. I got a JBL speaker.
Identity. I'll see you guys.
Thank you.
To send out for you as well. Let's see here. Michael. Michael, are you on? Michael
Yes, I am.
Weinberg. Hey, Mike, I've got a JBL speaker for you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for your participation. And again, I want to thank everyone for joining. I want to thank Kron Technologies for sponsoring today's session. Again, check out the website. As I mentioned, ask for a demo. They'll be more than happy to do that. And hopefully, we might see some of you guys. I think there's a different crowd coming in tomorrow for the AI um, security discussion, but I'm sure a few of you might be there as well. And
Absolutely.
look forward to talking to you then. All right, guys. Have a great day and take care.
Thanks again.
Okay. Bye-bye. And because I cannot download the private chat,
You
I
got to
will
take
just
pictures.
take a picture of those individuals that have sent me a private chats. Okay, that way I've got, so Mike, I've got your shipping info, right?
Maurice, would it be easier to send you an email as well to follow up?
Absolutely, that's fine. Manny, I've got
Okay.
yours.
I'll go ahead and do
Mark,
that now.
I've got yours.
So Maurice, I'll see you tomorrow.
Chris, all right, got yours. Let's see there. Let's see here, Michael. Okay, got yours, Michael. Andre, I've got yours as well. And private message from James. All right. Okay. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.